Namaste everyone. Welcome to the Bharat Varta podcast. I'm Roshan Karyappa and today we'll be discussing aspects of the rural economy in India. Joining me for this discussion are Avinash Oza, who is a fellow marketer with almost 2 decades of experience and has launched brands and products such as Parle-G, Brew, Lifebuoy, and understands rural marketing very well. He has a deep understanding of the consumer behavior as well, and related brand communication, and teaches some of these subjects at premier B schools in the country. Thanks so much for joining us, Avinash.
Thank you, Roshan.
We also have Amit Sinha, who is the founder of Unnati, which is on a mission to convert farmers into farming entrepreneurs and business people through the technology and digital capabilities. Amit has played various strategic roles at Paytm before this, including CFO and head of HR. Great to have you on the podcast, Amit.
Thanks, Roshan. And it's lovely for us also to be there on the call.
Yeah, pleasure to have the both of you. So Amit, I'll start with you and I'll start with a very basic question on what comprises the rural economy, right? For city brats such as myself, we think of towns and villages as, having a few farmers and some small businesses. Now I'm sure that there's more to it than that. Can you help us understand a little more in detail?
Thanks, Roshan. It's a very interesting question, and in fact, I have a very sort of I would say, a two-pronged view on it. Okay, on one side, whether even a rural consumer is a consumer. Okay, and for a lot of things, is very similar to what we feel. It's in the urban area. Okay, especially today when from an access perspective, the rural consumers have access to virtually the same things. Okay, that exist in the urban areas also, and no rural or a villager lives so far away from the cities that they cannot access various I would say services and products that are available in the urban areas. So while there are nuances to it, at a fundamental, at the core level, if you talk about for any product or service, they are just like any consumers. Okay. And I also don't subscribe to the view that it's a lower end of the market or that you have to necessarily look at a cheaper product for the rural areas. Okay, now, which is again a myth in my experience. What I have seen is that if you are giving the right value, whether you are in the rural, consumers do expect the same thing. Yes, they are different in the sense that there is more prevalence of a vernacular kind of a thing for the consumers, and a larger base of consumers understand the vernacular things better than what they are. And this especially because I come from the digital and even in the earlier avatar when we were working at Paytm, before Paytm became Paytm, there was a mobile content business that we used to run. Yeah. And obviously over the years what we have seen, yes, rural consumers do understand the vernacular language better. So as anybody who is running a company for the rural audience, you have to speak in their language. Okay, that's a key factor, and that is where the vernacular becomes more important than what it would be in an urban area. Okay.
Right.
Similarly, obviously there are bigger difficulties to reach the rural area. So the challenges of distribution are much more pronounced as we go beyond the city. The density of consumers that you find in the urban areas is much more higher than a rural area. So you have to have your approach of distribution different. But yeah, as far as the product goes, I'm very clear that both in the rural and urban areas, the demand for the product itself is the same. The demand for the service itself is the same. For example, if I am running an app today, let's say, of agriculture, the number of people who are using it, whether it is a large retailer or a distributor in a city, and when I say city, it's not necessarily the metro, but the smaller districts and towns, and or deep inside a village, the ask is the same. Okay, my approach to serving them might be different for different places, but from a requirement and from a product and service perspective, the consumers are the same. Yeah, you need to talk them in their language. You need to ensure that you have a density of consumers enough to make a business logical for yourself. Okay, but in terms of their aspirations, they are the same. In terms of what they are looking at from a product or service, they are pretty much the same as any other.
Yeah. So Avinash, actually, I was going to come to you on this. So some of what Amit mentioned, right? How is the rural consumer different from their urban cousins? Amit mentioned that in this age of information and access, the conventional tropes of are not really relevant, right? And so yeah, I mean, if you could help us understand the consumer mindset.
So so Amit rightly spoke on the rural economy, and talking about he spoke something about that the rural consumers' needs and aspirations are same as the urban or a metro counterpart. He's absolutely correct. So there is, I believe that in terms of aspiration, needs, wants, desires, there is hardly any difference between him and the urban or a metro counterpart, right? So be it year 2005 when I used to flock into rural areas and meet beauticians, because I was implementing a program of communication for a famous FMCG, right? So I used to meet beauticians at the beauty parlors, and in a pop strata of 10 to 20,000, right? I used to meet beauticians whose beauty parlors were decked up with L'Oreals and of the world, and I could see manicure pedicure charts in 2005.
Right.
And I asked her, like, how do you work? How do you get all these products? Are these fake? Are these counterfeits? Are these spell-alikes or lookalikes? So they said, no, the economy works. Just giving in this example, the distributor in Kanpur arranges for a session from L'Oreal or a Habib at a city location. He will charge us around 400 or 800 rupees for a day. All beauticians will attend these sessions for 2 days, and we get a certificate of it. And that's how more services at my beauty parlor means I'm more equipped, I'm more qualified, I'm more trained, and that's how you get more audience. So again, I'll repeat that rural audience needs, demands, wants are exactly same as the urban or a metro counterpart. You go to rural areas or you visit any school in rural area, call a student with his notebook, and you will see a copy label with a Doraemon on it or a Tendulkar on it. And when you ask them, who is he? Is he Doraemon? Do you know him? Yes, sir, we watch cartoons, we watch Augie and Cockroach, we watch Doraemon. So I don't see a difference between my son in Mumbai and the son who is staying around some 1,000 kilometers away from my home. So this digital has bridged that gap between a rural and urban and metro. So after green revolution, I think the biggest revolution which has bridged these two audiences, they were a distance apart, is only the media revolution. Today, at a click, everything is available to me and to a rural audience.
Right.
Believe me, I was talking to a dealer of TAFE tractors in 2007, and he said that, sir, today gone are the days when dealer used to demand, or dealer used to be acting as an influencer in his life. Whatever we used to say, farmer used to buy. Today, he comes with his information in hand. He walks in my store with a friend. He knows who is a financer and who is a bank, from where he has to source a loan. So they are quite they gather all their information from all the mediums. So to bring my point, media has bridged that gap. That divide was there, and even the housewives, when they walk to a retail outlet, they will not say that the retailer will not say that this is good detergent and buy it. Consumer will go and tell him that मुझे 1 रुपए का Ariel या 10 रुपए का वाला मुझे Tide का पैकेट दो, low pack unit, and the retailer has to provide that 10 rupee pack to that housewife. So when I ask retailers in rural, he clearly says that it's only a small audience, which is called as, when you classify rural consumers, R1, R2, R3, R4. So that R4 consumers who work on daily basis and they earn daily wages, these are the consumers to whom the regional and the local brands sell well. Otherwise, R1, R2 and R3, they're quite educated. They watch everything. So students clearly tell me, sir, I tell my father which mobile to purchase. I tell my father, black wali Pulsar leke aana. If you're planning to buy a bike, black wali Hero Honda, black wali Pulsar leke aana. Or the girl says that I watched a commercial on television of Usha swing machine, and my mother wanted to buy. I recommended her. So there is a lot of tester power with media approaching, media penetrating in rural pockets. So in terms of rural and metro counterparts, they all are on same page. वहाँ लुंगी डांस पैटर्न की सारीज मिलती है. When you talk about when I met a departmental store in rural Maharashtra, he showed me colorful jeans. I said, what is this? Well, sir, this is Rowdy Rathore pattern. So they are fast adopters, fast acceptors, fast learners. It's just a right distribution, right implementation, and continuation of that implementation. It is not that a vice president who thought that, yes, I want to run this exercise across rural India, and when he gets promoted, whatever he implemented gets discontinued. So this shouldn't be there. Right. So visiting into rural Rajasthan. So the hospital team said that there's a famous FMCG brand which used to supply a packet of diapers, a small nail cutter, and a booklet, Welcome to Motherhood, for the new mothers. Right. So the mother used to deliver a baby, and she used to get this packet free of cost. So just a habit forming exercise for the use of diaper. Suddenly it got discontinued. So whatever initiatives today corporates or FMCG or be it any company takes, they should continue doing it. Right? We should not behave with rural audience as a fly-by-night operators. Right? He will come, will make money, will leave. Right? So that's with these examples, I would conclude that yes, they all are same. We all are same.
Right.
And information is reaching to them, but there is still a big gap, big need of continuously feeding information to them in terms of when to grow, what to grow. So farming की बात कर रहे हैं, तो अमित सिन्हा का जो ऐप है, so if he guides them continuously, this is the right time, अभी show करना है, वो information की कमी कई farmer के साथ अभी भी है. So you will find that many farmers lack that information, that education, right? And there's a big opportunity for companies to win hearts of farmers. Say for example, a company tells them that you grow tulsi in the entire village. Everybody grows, and everybody in a part of out of 5 acres or 2 acres land, one part is given to grow tulsi. Thus 1 quintal will grow, 2 quintal you grow, and at the time when the time comes for the collection, so be it cocoa, be it tulsi, companies would say that oh, we promise to give you 25 rupees, but your tulsi has only X percentage of the benefit. Isme moisture zyada hai. My point is, even if corporates doing a contractual farming, we need also that education to the farmers, how to grow a right cocoa, how to grow a right quality of grain, how to grow a right potato. Once you invest and you educate them, you get the right output and they get the right price. Right. Today, the problem with rural economy and consumer is we are self-sufficient, we overgrow in India, right? We lot many times I have seen news that the food grain was lying in the godown, right? Not covered with a shed. So as a country, we do good while growing. Rural economy is purely agriculture. We grow well, we do well, but when a time comes to pay them back, they don't get what they demand for. So if he was expecting 25 rupees, he's getting only 7 rupees. So that if as a company I have to go to rural, I have to educate them, train them, bring them to up to a certain level, and then expect good results and pay them back.
Amit, I mean, this is kind of the problem that you're solving, right? And one of the things that we discussed on an earlier episode was also how farmers have not been able to effectively operate as entrepreneurs or businessmen, right? For a variety of reasons, whether it is limited market access or some of the constraints that Avinash mentioned as well, or price regulation, so on and so forth. And your organization is trying to turn these people into true entrepreneurs, right? Which they are, right? So can you talk a little bit about what you guys are doing?
Sure. So at Unnati, so one of the things that we realized was, and obviously we after talking to a lot of farmers and all, so what we realized was everybody tries to impart farming knowledge to the farmer. Okay, believe me, they know better what they have to do with their land than any anybody of us can be in today's scenario. Okay, a few years down the line, we do envisage the technology and the data to become rich enough, and the AI models and stuff that we are also working on to be becoming sufficiently good for actual on-ground usage. Okay, but today we lack that data. Today we lack that much information. What nobody tells the farmer is how to run his farming as a business. You know, one of the biggest challenges for our country specifically and farmers in our country is that the land holdings are small. All of us know that. Okay, and they are becoming smaller by the day. Okay, which means that his ability to make money out of that small land holding is always going to be limited. Okay, where further it becomes a double whammy is he also is not either not educated enough or not trained enough, I would say, in terms of really knowing how to run it as a business. Okay, and the exposure definitely is limited. And going back to what Avinash was also saying, in rural areas, people do have a paucity of information or access to various kinds of training programs and stuff. So while it might be a small shopkeeper also uses a tally today, okay, a farmer doesn't use any tool to manage his business. He is totally playing in the dark because he doesn't know whether, or he doesn't even realize in most cases that he's actually running a business. It's a business at the end of the day. It has factors of production. It has an output that comes out of the, so to say, the farm factory, and it has to be got and sold, and different levels of value addition to be done to that. Now, that is where we come in as a platform and as a partner, that we go ahead and use our tech platform to provide these tools and services to the farmers, using which he can go ahead and do a better sort of farming as a business. Okay, so it manifests in the form of 2-3 different kinds of service that we run for them. At the very base, or the core of it is a farmer's bank account and a farmer's financial service that is there. Okay, if a farmer needs working capital. At the end of the day, it's a working capital loan that he needs for his farming needs. Today, most of the banks provide that, but still a farmer goes to his local retailer to actually take it at a much higher rate, because it's a small working capital loan, while banks would give a 5 lakh, 6 lakh rupee of collateral based loan, which is good for the farmer, but in reality, it is not for his working capital needs, because a 2-hectare farmer, which is an average size of farm for simplicity's sake in the country, slightly lesser than 2 hectares, a farmer would not need more than say 70,000 rupees for his farm input needs. Now that is a kind of a service which is missing for him. So starting from the working capital needs of the farmer, and not only that, he should be able to also do some kind of a goal-based saving to reach and save for his next season's need of working capital. Allocation of these is what we provide for him as a service. Second, what we also try to do is provide him access to the right set of inputs, and this is where the knowledge aspect comes in. So instead of telling the farmer what is how he should do farming, what I rather go ahead and tell him, this is the right time or the critical time for you to use a particular kind of an input. Okay, this is the right dosage in which you should use it so that your crop doesn't get hurt. Because a lot of cases, farmers buy a costly product and then use it in the wrong way, because at the end of the day, these are medicine for plants. So you need to know and be educated how to use it. So again, there, using the knowledge and the right set of branded products so that you don't go ahead and use any spurious product. We would go ahead and educate him and give him inputs, relevant inputs, for instance, that this is how you should be using it. And he can source these products from us. That is where the commercial model comes into picture for us as a business.
Right.
Similarly, thankfully, today we are at a cusp of the agriculture industry where there's so many regulation changes that are happening for the good. Okay, yeah. Farming is being made totally independent of the regulations and the structures that we have seen in the past. What this will lead to is giving farmers a whole bunch of options to sell, not only within his local mandi, but again across different places. Now, it is easier said than done, because at the end of the day, it's not only that the farmers should be able to go ahead and sell. How they do that is a very critical factor, because at the end of the day, a small farmer will get an output of, say, a 1 tractor or 2 tractor kind of a grain, whereas a processor would need a larger quantity and a sustained quantity for running his factory of food processing. Now, this is where our platform tries to do a bridging and sort of based on the predictive platform that we have, which predicts what is the kind of an output that is going to come out of each farmer's farm. We go ahead and create lots for the end processors which can directly be bought, and the money goes directly back into the farmer bank account, so that this whole thing is very transparent. Because of the lack of information and awareness, there is a lot of opacity in how the business is done today, and that is where our platform comes in and makes it very transparent. And during this whole flow, we would go ahead and create a P&L for the farmer, give it to him, educate him that this is how your business is doing. This is what you can do additionally to go ahead and reduce your cost or increase your earning. At the end of the day, truth of any business is either reducing the cost or increasing the business. There is no third thing, okay? And everything else aids that as a business. And that is where we come in with the farmer and explain to him, train these factors, and ensure that he is able to make the most out of these tools. Okay.
Right. Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, you're bringing in efficiencies throughout the entire chain, right? So that's amazing. So Avinash, I mean, one thing that we've seen for the longest time is that development, as we know it, we mean it to be urbanization, right? Or people moving into the cities, migrating into the cities. We're seeing now that access doesn't matter for a wide variety of jobs now more than ever, right? And that people can operate from where they are. And wanted to check with you on how this is going to affect the erosion of human capital that used to happen earlier.
So I think post COVID, I think we all are waiting for a new vaccine or a medicine, and once it is in place, so all the okay, I'll reply. I answer this in a different way. With the government policies of Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, right? So, and after this media revolution, Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana connected rural to urban, urban to urban, and urban to metro, right? Now there was a road which is allowing a rural consumer to reach his nearby town, work and go back, right? So in times of COVID, so COVID is again a pandemic. There were like many such incidents in different states, cities, countries, and I think living with such kind of situation is part of life. Farmers who used to work in Mumbai city as an auto driver or as a security guard in the office premise, they have gone back, and to call them back again, companies have to invest a little bit more, talk about their safety, security, and teach them about social distancing. Wearing mask will be part of life for another 6 months or a year. That again comes that education part, that if you have to go back, right, to a city to take up a job or to work, how to live in an urban area will be different of how you were living in past. Say, for example, quoting an example of a client which I used to work with, Western Union Money Transfer. So when organizations which used to train for vocational courses like for an electrician, for a fitter, and the person who used to be trained used to travel to Middle East countries as a fitter or an electrician or a plumber, right? So after doing course, the brand used to run a service that these are the rules and regulations of how to live in a country like Middle East. The rules are very strict. There is no eve teasing. The behavior, the manner, culture is a bit different. So how you have to live your life when you're living in Middle East countries. So this education was there, that you're going into a different country where the culture, government rules and regulations are very strict. So this education has to be done by companies which want their rural counterparts to come back to the urban pockets and take up jobs again. This is one part. Second part is taking care of their health and insurance. That is going to cost companies at least 2 to 3 times more, right, to bring them back on track. So urbanization will happen, and I believe that in a month's time, we should be across the globe. There will be some vaccine or a medicine gets approval, and again things will be back on track soon. But till the time, if it's not, then you have to live with the social distancing, the other norms as prescribed by government.
Right. Do you think that there will be some kind of a lag effect in people continuing to stay back because of this?
The only effect I believe is if the people have gone to rural, will increase the rural economy. Say three wheelers sale would go up, right? There will be more sale of tractors because there it is his own house. There are no other liabilities, right? So today when I'm sitting in my home, we three people in a family, we're sitting in different rooms. Three ACs are on, three mobiles are on. So there are. If you talk about rural farmer, he spends wisely, right? It's his hard-earned money growing from a soil. He just knows one thing, that I have to grow something from soil. It is my duty, right, towards nation. So answering this, yes, definitely. I think again I would repeat that some businesses will grow, some businesses will benefit from this. People going back from metro to rural, like three-wheeler industry, which makes him self-sustained. He makes him his own boss, right? So sale of input and output, agri input and output business will go up. Three-wheelers, tractors will definitely grow, and the people who would come back again, we have to invest back in them, train them how to live with these new norms. If you have to come back,
Right, right. So Amit, one of the key aspects that you mentioned earlier was access to capital, and we've seen that there's been a huge focus on financial inclusion, right? In fact, Paytm itself has done some tremendous work in that regard through the wallet and services, and now you're doing this with Unnati as well. Can you talk about how this is sort of affected the rural economy over the years?
So, so yeah, you are right in saying that there has been a lot of sort of increase in the penetration of the basic services, I would say. Okay, and so I think in the first phase, what was more especially relevant for the rural economy was the use of the basic services. So today, virtually everybody has or every family, I would say, has a bank account, has a debit card, which is a RuPay debit card and stuff. In the next phase, what we will see is a lot of more nuanced services. Okay? So for example, one of the things that, as I was saying, that we were doing is we are providing a lot of farmer specific features in the services that we are doing, okay, which is a step up from a plain vanilla, say a bank account or a loan that one gets. So for example, all of us know that there has been an exposure of the kind of consumer durable kind of loans in the past, let's say, 4, 5, 6 years, okay, which first happened in the cities where larger shops you would get a zero EMI kind of a product, which enabled a lot many more people to actually go ahead and purchase consumer durables. And now it has been extending to rural areas. Same philosophy will go over to a lot many more sort of and the urban areas. It was driven by the ability to do a real-time check of your credit rating and stuff like that. Also the use of cards, because a lot of the companies would give zero EMI interest on a card, and not necessarily if you are giving money in cash. Now the same thing, you will see a lot many more industries which are rural focused will keep on experimenting with and finding the right fit product for the rural areas. So I think there's a lot of work that has been done, but there definitely is still a lot more that could be done, especially from a financial services perspective. So basic inclusion is there. What we need to do is now come up with the sort of specific product for each and every target.
Yeah. So Avinash, on the back of all of this rising access to capital, right, we're seeing brands actively invest in the rural or semi-urban consumer. So November last year, Coca-Cola launched Rani Float, that's aimed at tier 2 and rural demographic. Similarly, I think Nestle, Marico, Godrej, and all of them have some sort of a rural focus as well, right? Earlier, we used to see a lot of watered down communication. So some of this would be like literal translations of whatever catchy jingles or brand communication lines that we would hear directly translated into English, right? I mean, into all of the local languages. But now we're seeing a lot more specific communication, specific products itself. So what do you see about that? I mean, do you see that expanding on the back of all of this?
Yes. It's a good question that see if these brands will not reach, somebody else will reach to them, right? And be it packaging, or communication, it has to talk the rural language, right? The way rural consumers talk, or like the way they live. Giving an example here. Maggi sold in Mumbai, there's a low pack unit costing at 5 rupees. The same Maggi sold, in rural areas at the cost of 5 rupees. So price wise, there is no difference. It's only understanding the rural household. So in my house, there will be some 20-30 shelves where I can stock. I can buy more and I can stock. I can buy a high priced, I can buy. When you go to a rural household, there is no place to stock the products. Hence the low pack units, right? Which gives more convenience to them, right? Those things will grow. Those things have already started long back. So sachet revolution, I think one of the biggest success, right? And 1 rupee pack of talcum powder, 1 rupee sachet of a shaving gel,
or the chick shampoo,
or
and stuff,
1 rupee detergent pack. Yes, everything that's like a 1 rupee shop.
Yeah.
Right, rural shop, right? So these things will definitely increase the economy, right? And easier to consumers use more. Repeat purchase will be more, right? So give one more example. Companies running a program like Hindustan Unilever, running a program with rural women called as Shakti Amma, right? So empowering rural women. These women, apart from the retail outlets, are selling products from home, right? There are many SHGs, right, which are being used by private companies, right? For example, Jivika is an SHG. It's a government initiative, right? So small self-help group. Or if I go to Gujarat, I find Seva as an NGO, and the women who work under Seva are called as Rudy Ben, Rudy Sisters. Now, more than 60,000 or more than 60,000 women part of SHGs. They are also selling company brands. So whatever is produced extra, these women go knock door to door and then they sell. And products, yes, have to invest. Companies have to invest in one thing. A, I know what is my product. B, I don't know who is my customer, how he will be using my product. So you have to invest some time and energy in understanding the audience. Right. The product is acceptable. The product will be used acceptable, right? So it's not that I drink Coke or I drink Thumbs Up or Fanta. A rural consumer will not. So we have seen many viral pics over WhatsApp that in a rural wedding, in a small disposable cups, all the baratis or invitees were served Coke or a Thumbs Up. So it feels good. Wow. They're also at the same, they're like their urban or metro counterparts. Yeah. But if only company has to understand the distribution implementation has to be on a regular basis. So if I am not available, then there will be a duplicate of a Bisleri, there will be a duplicate of a Fanta available on the some regional player will take over your share very easily.
Right. Right.
So I only see a distribution implementation has to be perfect. Distribution channel has to be in place, right? And a regular visit to retail outlets, rural consumers will definitely help in companies to grow and earn more from rural.
Yeah, yeah. Otherwise, as you said, I mean, they will just cede the brands will just cede the space to someone else to step in and do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I'll quote an example. Once I traveled to a rural area and I purchased a duplicate Vicks Vaporub, right?
Yeah.
And I shared it. I gave it to a rural, person was walking. I said, "Is this original or a duplicate?" So the moment he opened the cap, so the cap got detached from that small container, and then he first sniffed the smell of the Vicks Vaporub, and then he said that, "Sir, this is duplicate. This is not company product." I said, "How do you know this?" He said that the packaging is very poor, and the cost at which you purchased was only 2 rupees. और 2 रुपए में कंपनी का माल नहीं आता, right? So very well, customers, they in the rural audience, they know that what brands are making, what is a brand. Rural consumers very well can differentiate between a brand and a local product. It is just that R3 and R4 customer affordability is an issue. That's why they go for a regional local brand. So
Right.
if there has to be some education, how from an organization, that how does a brand look like? What are the mnemonics on it? How to identify a original and a duplicate, counterfeit, spell-alike, look-alike product,
Yeah.
right? And if the distribution is proper, definitely companies will
Yeah.
make good roads and make good money from rural economy.
Yeah.
ऐसा नहीं है spending power नहीं. There is a lot of spending power, right? They spend wisely. But then if the distribution is not there, somebody else will take the shelf space and it will be sold.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Amit, I mean, the government takes an active interest in all of this because obviously there's a significant voter base in rural India, right? 2/3 of the country is rural by some estimates. And we've seen some recent policy changes in states like UP, MP, Gujarat in agriculture and labor. We have an episode that covers all of these changes in further detail. How do you see this impacting the rural economy, and would you have any other initiatives that the government should take from a policy perspective?
So definitely these are far-reaching changes, so a few of them also are sort of implemented, I would say. So we'll see while there are policy changes, we'll see how exactly it is being implemented. But then I would say that a lot of these changes are really revolutionary and will definitely make a huge impact in changing things for the good in the agriculture and rural sector. So one of the other things, in fact, what we have seen a recent trend on, and which is in the interest of the farmers and is a sort of a formalization of the agriculture economy also. Okay, from and whatever policy changes government has been doing will drive towards the formalization of the whole structure. Perhaps the only other market which is similar to the Indian agriculture in terms of the small land holding is China. Okay, apart from the Southeast Asian and the other South Asian nations. But globally there are two models. There is a large farm kind of a thing in Europe, US, and Australia, and all the major other like the Western sort of countries with strong agriculture play. And the other is sort of India, Southeast Asia, China to a certain extent and all. China has done a lot of improvement in their agriculture ecosystem because the contracting has been very strong and contracts are held significantly in China. And perhaps that is where now with the whole changes in the APMC guidelines, I would say that is not an act anyway. And in terms of making things out of the essential commodity, plus letting the farmers go ahead and directly interact with the end purchaser or the processor would definitely bring in a lot of efficiency and also give a sort of a see, at the end of the day, whenever a farmer is producing something, it has to be good enough to be sold. It has to follow the demand, because see, as a farmer, as a producer, you should be producing something which is what the market is demanding. Okay. Now that demand, if the chain that is making the product reach out to the end consumer, okay, via the middlemen, via the processors and everybody else, if that is shorter, the knowledge transfer becomes much more faster. So if there is a moving trend, that can be captured much faster by the farmer, and his production can be adjusted towards the need. Okay, rather than taking many years. So, for example, one of the places where Indian rice exports have been really facing a challenge is the pesticide residues. So for all the European, Middle East markets, Western world markets, which were big buyers of our high quality basmati rice and others, and the rice and related products, have a strong regulation against pesticide residue in them. Now, that means that you need to follow certain practices and avoid certain chemicals at the time of production itself. Now, this knowledge should reach out to the farmers. Otherwise, how will he know what is getting sold? If he was directly selling, then he would know. With such a small landholding size, it is difficult for him to directly sell. The only good optimal choice, looking at the conditions, can be a shorter chain, where the knowledge is transferred very fast to the farmer that, hey, now the market has moved on. You can't anyway keep producing the way, even if it is at a cost of, say, a lower production, you should live with it, because then you will get a better value of the product. And you will not be restricted by only the domestic market. So these are the kind of changes which I am very sure will happen at a fundamental level because of the changes that are being brought with the regulation changes and all. And this should help build good farming businesses out of the agriculture sector, and give a lot of aggressive push towards the formalization of the agriculture, which I think would be very good for everybody in the ecosystem.
Absolutely, yeah. So Avinash, same question to you as well. Any policy initiatives that you can think of that would benefit the rural economy immensely?
Be it the policy implemented by government or a policy of any private company, right? Implementation issues are always there. So talking about be it a midday or a Narega, right, which is going to benefit the rural consumers, right? So I have only one issue, that implementation audit, whenever it happens, right, the audit of whatever policy has been implemented, right, there are always flaws being checked. Flaws will surface, the problems will surface. So if the implementation of any policy, be it a Ladli Yojana, be it midday meal, be it a scheme for farmers, or a scheme for rural women, you go and do your deliveries in hospitals, so your government is going to pay something for it, right? So implementation is an issue, and there's lots of corruption. So if any policy which is going to benefit rural audience, if it is implemented by a corporate, implemented by a government institution, if it is implemented properly, right, there should be no flaws, no corruption. Then only this policy will reach out to a larger audience, and people will have trust. Otherwise, I always come across when I go to rural areas, and when I start clicking pictures of the wall paintings, where the wall painting educates consumer of, don't get your child, girl child, marry early. You should teach your girl child, right? Apne bachche ko padhao, right? So whenever I click images, so the rural guy who is passing by, he will say that, sir, the election is going to happen next week, so somebody came and painted the walls. So it should not be, implementation should not be need based. It should be like, yes, properly done, without any flaws, without any corruption, without any cheating. So if I talk about midday meal scheme of government, so every time when I reach a school teacher or a rural guy will come and say that, whatever funds we get for midday meal, the principal or the teachers take away that money, buy ration for themselves, and whatever they are feeding the kids is of very poor quality food, right? So sir, whenever you go to city, please iska complaint karna. So they make a request, why don't you lodge a complaint on our behalf? So I see that there is always an implementation issue. The policy is good; it is going to benefit for all, but then it should not be like the benefit is not reaching the end user.
Right. Okay, so we usually like to end the podcast on an optimistic note. And not that, I mean, we haven't had a lot of optimism on the episode, but it's customary to ask our guests, what they're optimistic about moving forward. So, Amit, what are you optimistic about in this whole post-COVID world, if you're living in from the perspective of, rural economy and growth?
I think so. Not only from a rural overall, but also agriculture specific. I think we are in a very very exciting time right now. I would say the whole COVID thing has brought a lot of disruption into the behavior, and its behavior is changing across both the urban and rural areas. All of us are learning to live in a different way, and this will throw up a lot of opportunities. So smart entrepreneurs, smart people everywhere will sort of find new opportunities in it and build up and then do things which are done in a new way and find new business opportunities to deliver. So I'm pretty sure while in the short term, obviously, there's a pain that all of us are going through because of the whole virus and the way things have affected us. But I think in the medium to long term, we would definitely come out much better than what we have been, because a lot of the things which were slow in getting implemented have been sort of accelerated. And in a way, I think we are galvanizing towards a better future, and that I think is a very important factor. Instead of getting depressed about how things are, if we look at the future and galvanize ourselves to move towards a better future, I think all of us will gain from it, and there's a lot of stuff that can be done and built forward.
Fantastic. Yeah, Avinash, same question to you. What are you optimistic about?
I think this period is blessing in disguise for each one of us, and the way I have been reading articles and across the media, everybody, including the rural audience, have learned to live the life using everything is, the learning has gone digital. So be it classroom sessions, be it a launching of a rural product on a digital platform, right? So most of the farmers or rural audience or the women are attending webinars. The kind of downloads have gone up for a classroom app, right? Quoting an example here, so I have a friend who runs Guruji World Technologies. Technology is a CEO of Guruji World, and G Class is an application for English and Marathi medium students, right? So he's into digital education. He's like he's the Byju's of Maharashtra, right? Suddenly, from few thousands to the downloads have gone up to 2 lakh,
right.
The application download. So students are really enjoying learning at home using an app. So it is not only about one example, but it is blessing in disguise for everybody, right? We have to, such episodes are good, right? Certain things happens good in life. ये चीजें हमको बहुत सिखा के जाती, right? So I think people and companies should also rise to the occasion, seeing that if there is a blockage, there is a hindrance, how I should overcome it, and how give a innovative solution to the customers and to the audience. So be it rural, urban, metro, right, urban, how I will make my way and still be present in the minds of consumers. That is a challenge, and I think most of the organizations have found a solution to it.
Right. Yeah, that's a fantastic note to end our podcast on. This has been a really insightful episode. Thank you so much, Amit and Avinash. Thank you so much for your time. It was a real pleasure talking to you both. Thanks everyone for tuning into this podcast. This episode will be available on all popular platforms. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe and share. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and Jai Hind.